Clemson fans, welcome back to another edition of the Clemson Sports Show, a victory edition as Clemson came out on top 48-27 over Wake Forest on Saturday. Matt Connolly is joining me as always. And Matt, I told you, man, I told you that this was coming. Clemson was going to beat a top 15 team in the country by 21 points. We all saw that coming, right?
Hey, you did have them winning at least. I tweeted this out during the game. I wish I would have watched more of Wake Forest's defense and less of the offense before making my pick, because that was a pretty atrocious defense, but it was also just a great performance by Clemson. Obviously, the defense got off to a great start. Offense made a lot of plays. DJ hit some big passes. The running backs got going, rushed for over 300 yards. So just an all-around great performance. It was definitely the best performance for Clemson this year.
Yes. Especially going up against a team in Wake Forest that still had a lot to play for. They still do, to potentially win the ACC Atlantic. For Clemson to come out like this and just dominate them start to finish. You and I were talking about it. They dominated at the line of scrimmage throughout the whole game on either side of the ball. They won the battle in the trenches fairly easily. And I was surprised by the offensive performance. I did pick Clemson to win, but it was 27-24. I wasn't surprised by what the defense did. It just kind of shocked me that the offense, coming off that UConn game in which they had 129 rushing yards, DJ wasn't able to get it going. Was like 21 to 44 passing. For the offense to come out like that and rush for 333 yards, for DJ to look as comfortable as he did, I mean, yeah, this was the most impressive performance by the offense all season. And it just makes you think, man, if Clemson had played like this throughout the whole season, they're 10-1 right now, and in contention for the playoffs. Yeah,
for sure. And look, I mean, we talked about it a little bit last week, maybe not enough. With a UConn game, you're missing a starting offensive lineman in Will Putnam. So he's not in. And then your top two running backs and Will Shipley and Kobe Pace are out. So, with all due respect to Phil Moff and Darian Richard, there's a noticeable gap between those two guys. And then when you have Will Shipley and Kobe Pace, I thought the backs did a great job of finding holes, making guys miss, using their speed, getting out in the open field, inside, outside, whatever it was. Clemson had a lot of success on the ground, and they just, the backs did a great job. The offensive line paved the way, opened up some big holes. And Will Shipley, in particular, just when he gets in the open field, he's really, really hard to tackle, hard to bring down. He makes guys miss when he gets to the second level. So, yeah, I mean, it was just, an all-around great performance in the rushing game, and not something we've seen this year, but perhaps we should have seen it coming, just with Clemson getting more healthy, with those backs coming back. And just watching Wake Forest, I mean, Army scored 56 against Wake Forest. It's just not a great tackling team, not great up front, pretty small up front compared to Clemson and some of the better teams in the ACC. So, man, it was very surprising in some ways and shocking in some ways, but also probably something we should have seen coming a little bit more.
We definitely should have seen it coming, just based on how bad Wake Forest defense has been throughout the course of the season, especially their rush defense. They had come into this game allowing over 200 rushing yards per game. So I still was surprised by the 333 yard number, but not really so much given the caliber of opponent that they're going up against on that side of the ball. One thing that I did want to talk to you about, I found this very interesting. Both teams turned the ball over 3 times each, but here's the key difference here. Clemson was able to score 14 points off of those turnovers. Wake Forest scored none. In my opinion, that I know Clemson won by 21 points. The math doesn't work in that situation, but I feel like that was the difference in the game, in my opinion. Clemson was able to capitalize on those turnovers while Wake Forest couldn't. What did you see in that area?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you think about in the third quarter, Clemson's driving down, gets all the way down to the red zone and fumbles, and it really seemed like the momentum was maybe about to shift. I mean, Wake Forest had a lot of success on offense in the second quarter. They were still down at that point, obviously, but still had the ball, had a chance to go and really make a game out of it, and they turn it over the very next play. So I thought that sequence right there was huge. And then also Clemson did a really good job in the red zone. I mean, I know Wake Forest scored a couple touchdowns and ended up getting to 27 points, but Clemson also did a nice job of when they got down inside the 10, had first and goal inside the 10 a couple times, I believe, and came away with field goals. And so that's huge for a defense. Clemson's done that all year. They've been giving up a few big plays here and there. They did certainly against Wake Forest. which has a really, I mean, I was really impressed with Wake Forest's offense, just that passing attack. Those receivers are really, really good. Hartman's accurate with the ball, does a nice job. But man, just when they got it down there inside the 10, they had trouble running, and it allowed Clemson to get some stops in the red zone. So, yeah, for sure, just taking advantage of turnovers and then red zone defense, I thought was huge for Clemson.
Another weird thing that kind of happened, early on in the game in the second quarter, the Will Shipley jump pass to Davis Allen. Look, I know this is something that I saw on Twitter. I saw on the Tigers Den message board on ClemsonSports.com. There was a little bit of some mixed reactions as to that play calling there. What did you think about that? For me, I found it a little bit too risky. You got to put the ball in the hands of Will Shipley or Kobe Pace and let him run it up, up the middle to side or whatever, or put the ball in DJ Uyungale's hands. What did you think about that play call?
I actually like the play call. I mean, when Clemson went jumbo, I told the person sitting beside me in the press box, there's no way they're going to run it here. Like they had already gotten stopped once this year in jumbo at Louisville. They got stopped a couple of times in short yardage against Wake Forest already. And it wasn't like a 4th and inches. It was a 4th and 2. And so I just felt like they were going to pass the ball. I didn't know if it was going to be Shipley passing it necessarily, but I thought that they were going to throw out a jumbo. So that was another instance where I felt like Wake Forest defense I just didn't think they played overly smart yesterday. And that was just another instance there where I thought that they should have been probably looking for the pass there. I mean, I just felt like for sure it was going to be a pass. And they had decent coverage. I mean, they didn't leave Davis Allen completely open by any stretch. But yeah, just didn't think Wake Forest defense was very smart. I mean, Clemson was super banged up at receiver. And there were times when, Wake Forest is running with former walk-ons across the field, paying a lot of attention there. I remember a couple instances, and then they throw a screen back to Will Shipley. It's just like, man, how in the world did out of the options there, how did he choose Will Shipley as the guy to leave open? So not a great defensive game plan by Wake Forest. I didn't play overly smart. I didn't think, but still give Clemson a lot of credit. I thought the coaching staff, really the offensive and defensive staff, did a great job and had those guys ready with a good plan.
One person in particular we need to give credit to, and it's because we've criticized this person, at various points throughout the season, is DJ. 11-19, over 200 yards passing, had 17.5 yards per completion. I thought he played the game that he needed to play in this one. I know he had the interception toward the end of the first half. The pitch there was snuffed out by Wake Forest. But I thought DJ probably played a top 3 game of the season, top 2, top 3 game of the season. What did you think about his performance on Saturday?
Yeah, I thought he played very well. He did some nice things in the passing game. Obviously, that one play where he broke 2 sacks and ended up heaving it down to Bo Collins was just a huge play. I mean, you were already starting to hear some murmurs in the crowd, like, man, what's going on? Like, what's up with the offense and some frustration and stuff. And he ends up making that play, leads to a touchdown. The other play to Bo, where I think Bo was lined up in the slot, went down the left sideline. DJ hits him, just a perfect pass. Bo was able to bring it in with one hand while getting grabbed. So hit some really, really big plays. He wasn't great. He wasn't perfect, anything like that. But I thought he had a very solid game, made some nice plays, did a nice job of extending plays. And honestly, I thought in the run game, I know he didn't, I think it was 30 yards or so he finished with. It wasn't a huge run performance, but I thought he kept just enough on some of the zone reads to keep Wake Forest honest. And you saw that open some things up for Will Shipley and Kobe Pace. So and we should probably mention Kobe Pace too. I think he had over 190 yards. I mean, just a huge, huge game for him, a couple touchdowns. So he and Shipley both ran really hard. But yeah, definitely give DJ credit.
191 rush yards for Kobe Pace. Will Shipley had his 4th game of the season with 2 touchdowns. I was going to ask one of the Clemson's, statistics people after the game if that was some sort of true freshman record. I mean, that's just very impressive what he's been able to do, carrying the load for Clemson at various points this year. And going back over to DJ, you mentioned him running the ball. He had 8 carries for 30 yards. That was just impressive to me. That was just gutsy, like for all that he's gone through this season, for him to put his body on the line, not slide or give himself up early, continue to play through contact and when rushing with the football. I just found that very impressive to me. It really goes to show kind of the character that he has and the leadership that he has there too, dealing with that right knee injury to go out there. and still run the football. And what I
I
also
was going to throw in this stat for you. So Shipley rushed for multiple touchdowns for a fourth game this season, ties Travis Etienne, who did that 4 times in 2017 for the most multiple rushing touchdown games by a true freshman since 2000. So a little stat for you. Yeah, Travis Etienne set a lot of those records over his career for sure. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that while we were talking about it.
I appreciate that. I wish I had that for my by the numbers piece, which you could check out on ClemsonSports.com. Provide all the stats that we saw from Clemson versus Wake Forest. And another stat that I found interesting in this one is receivers only caught 5 passes from DJ on Saturday, 4 to Bo Collins, 1 to Will Sweeney. So it was really impressive to me. This is what I was looking at as well. Without Joe Ngata, without Justin Ross, without Frank Ladson, without all these receivers that were playing against Georgia, just a few months ago, for DJ to go out there and have the type of performance that he had, I still, you got to give props to him, especially after everything that he's gone through this year. And that connection between him and Bo Collins. Look, if every single receiver on Clemson's roster was Bo Collins and they had that kind of chemistry, I mean, DJ would be putting up Kenny Pickett type numbers, It just feels that way.
Well, we heard about their chemistry in the offseason. We heard about it in the spring and the summer, just that those guys were really close, obviously former high school teammates, and we were excited to see how that connection would transfer over. Mm-hmm. And it took some time for sure. I mean, it hasn't been just, right from the start, just great. But as the season has gone along, they've just gotten more and more comfortable together. Bo looks like a future star at receiver. I wrote about that today. And some of my takeaways from the game, just he looks like a guy that's, the next wide receiver star. I mean, he's got multiple 100-yard games. I think 2 of the last 3 games, he's finished with over 100 yards. He's had a touchdown in his last 3 games. So he's really playing well. I think he has obviously a very bright future. And just, the rest of the offense too. I mean, Davis Allen will be back next year. The entire offensive line will be back next year. The only senior Clemson started against Wake Forest was Will Sweeney, who is a former walk-on who, obviously isn't a guy that's going to go out and have a huge impact as far as just catching the ball and stuff. So they're really not losing much at all off of this offense, at least from guys. Obviously, Justin Ross is gone, but at least from guys who played yesterday, pretty much everyone's going to be back. And so, yeah, I mean, you have to feel good about the future of this offense if you're a Clemson fan, particularly with the way the offensive line played yesterday and just continuing to see that improvement from DJ.
You definitely do. And for our YouTube audience, our podcast audience didn't get to see this. I just tried drinking the water with the cap on. So I want you all to make fun of me in the comments below because I deserve to be memed as the young kids would call it or something like that. So
early morning after a late night, man. It's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a late day there staying, you were out there till what, 8 or 9 o'clock, writing pieces, staying there, doing post-game press coverage. So yeah, it was a lot that went on Saturday, even though it was a 21-point blowout. And part of the reason why it was a blowout for Clemson is because of the crowd. You mentioned it, you tweeted about it. The fans, in my opinion, really helped play an instrumental role getting Wake Forest to jump off sides. I was on the sidelines and Sam Hartman was doing this the whole time. He was putting his hands up to his helmet and just trying to hear because the crowd noise was so loud. In my opinion, that was one of the difference makers in this game. It was something I talked about in our Friday preview. I felt like the home crowd was going to play a huge role in this one. Yeah,
for sure. The crowd was excellent. The student section, big props to those guys. It was packed the entire game. They didn't leave, even when it was a blowout, even when you could tell that Clemson had the game in hand. I looked over on the hill and their body surfing and passing people around in the crowd and stuff, but everyone was still there. And yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the false starts. This is a note from Ross Taylor, Clemson's SID, who said Wake Forest had 6 false starts yesterday, tied for the most by an opponent since 2014 at Death Valley. So great job by the Clemson crowd. Made a big difference. Wake Forest had not played in an environment like that all year. And this season, Clemson opponents had 24 false starts at Death Valley. So great job by the crowd all season. Made a huge difference. They really stuck behind this team. Other than maybe the Florida State game where there were understandably some frustrations, and some guys leaving early and stuff. And maybe some booing and stuff. Just really a great job all year by the crowd. So props to you guys for bringing it week in and week out as well.
Yeah, it was electric the whole time. We talked about the student section. They were cheering a lot. And one thing that was different than the Florida State game, besides the fans leaving, is, the lack of boos at time. I know there were some murmurs early on, like you mentioned, but for the most part, they were supporting them throughout, and they had reason to support them. So Clemson finishes off the season 6-0 at home, perfect 6-0 for those 4th, 5th-year seniors, undefeated at home in their collegiate careers. So yeah, it's just very impressive what Clemson's fan base showcased on Saturday. And, there were a lot of big time recruits in there. Let's just get right to the recruits. We'll talk a little bit about some big picture stuff later on, but there's some big time players in attendance. Justice Haynes out of Georgia, Caleb Downs, a 5-star prospect out of Georgia, Luke Montgomery, a top 100 junior out of Findlay, Ohio, Jaden Davis, the top ranked player in the 2024 class. And then, of course, got to say the best for last, Antonio Williams, not necessarily the best for last. I mean, probably the most important.
Probably the highest need at the moment.
Yeah, the highest need.
At least for 2022.
For 2022, there we go. So we'll correct that. Maybe we'll have our excellent producer Jake Evans edit that out. No, I'm just kidding. We're talking about Antonio Williams right now. He received an offer from Clemson after attending Saturday's game versus Wake Forest. Matt, I'm going to go a little bit more into detail about what I've seen from Antonio, because I've gotten to see him in person this season. But what did you think about the offer being extended at this time?
Yeah, first of all, I think it just says a lot about Clemson's. I want to give I know some fans have been frustrated by the way Clemson recruits, but I want to give the staff some credit for getting him in immediately, moving on from Andre Green Jr. They've made him a priority. Antonio Williams a priority now. He knows that he's a priority, and to get him on campus a few days later and get that offer to him in person, I think was huge. So, yeah, I first of all, just credit to Clemson staff. I think you would be better to speak about this, but I think he's a guy that Clemson doesn't really have anyone like him on the roster right now, just as far as a smaller, speedy, shifty guy who's able to go in there, maybe in the slot, punt return, whatever it may be, and make some plays. So I'll defer to you, though. You've seen him in person this year. Just what do you think of him as a player and what he would bring to this offense if he does end up choosing Clemson?
I put a note in the Tigers Den message board on ClemsonSports.com that Antonio, when I saw him in person, it was like watching a video game player, like live action. He was operating at a completely different speed than anyone else on the football field. And Dutch Fork has some pretty good players. They were going up against Greenwood High School. You mentioned his shiftiness. He's fast. He had one play where he kind of faked to the outside a little bit, but then just cut straight up down the field, left his opponent with his legs split. And he has game-changing speed. He's the type of player that I believe will, primarily operate in the slot. He's about 6 foot, maybe a couple inches taller than I am. So he's not necessarily a big dude. He's not like your Joe Ngata or your Bo Collins or, anyone like that. But he is somebody who can go inside or outside. He just has that game-changing speed, like I mentioned before. Lightning quick feet. His feet are just, when he makes cuts in and out, he's just fantastic. He's one of the best players that I've seen in person. Just he operates at another level, and you can see that with the production he's had this season. So I think this gives Clemson kind of a true slot for the 2022 year. You got Nathaniel Joseph in the 2023 class, so he'll be coming in a year after. He's definitely a slot player through and through. Antonio's a guy who can go inside and outside. So I think he would be a huge addition for Clemson's offense.
Yeah, and you think about the offense, the potential of this offense in the next couple of years or so, with an offensive line that we mentioned as everyone coming back. Will Shipley is a true freshman at running back. Phil Moffitt is a true freshman at running back. Kobe Pace is a sophomore. Jake Brenningstool at tight end has been really, really good late in the year. Really impressed with him. I think he has a chance to be a excellent player down the road. Bo Collins, we've already talked about. So just a lot of young talent on this offense. And obviously adding Antonio Williams would be another key piece of that if they're able to land him. So I think, as much as the offense has been a frustration at times this year, I think that some of that frustration's going to pay off, and we're going to see more of the Clemson offense we're accustomed to seeing here in the next couple of years.
And of course, Matt, a lot of this is going to depend on DJ Uyunglele. He's had his struggles this season. If Clemson wants to get back to where they've been before winning championships, which is the expectation at Clemson, DJ can't have some of the games that he's had this year. I know the pick six against Georgia wasn't necessarily his fault, but still a subpar performance overall. He had the pick six against Pittsburgh, didn't necessarily play, to his ceiling against NC State earlier this year. So DJ has to be firing on all cylinders, even with that great supporting cast around him, in order for Clemson to get back to the playoffs and winning championships. But, looking at Antonio Williams, you talked about, the difference that he would be able to make in Clemson's offense. I talked about it as well. Let's see what happens here. I think it's very interesting because you reported that Antonio is likely to take an official visit later on to Clemson, whether that means after his playoffs, his playoffs end, a week before his signing period, it remains to be seen. But if that does end up happening and Antonio signs December 15th, that means Clemson would have gotten him on campus twice in the span of just around 3 weeks, which would be huge for their chances with him. And I think it would give them, a lot of momentum in his recruitment. Still can't rule out Ole Miss. That's a school that his family has connections to. Auburn, the head coach Ryan Harsin has made a really strong impression on him, and Antonio likes the direction that they're going in, even though they've had a couple of difficult games in the past couple of weeks here. In state, South Carolina, it's a school he's taken an official visit to that he really likes, so have to pay attention to them too. But if Clemson's able to get him on campus twice in about 3 weeks or so, it's an offer he's been waiting on. I think they would likely gain a pledge from his recruitment.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Clemson has to feel at least pretty good with where they are right now after just getting them on campus. You mentioned Auburn and South Carolina being a couple of schools Antonio's considered. You want to go ahead and jump ahead to that Clemson South Carolina game and take a look. Obviously, South Carolina beat Auburn last night, which big win for them to get bowl eligible. And I think this game, it's a lot better game than I thought we were going to see a few weeks back when you had South Carolina looking completely awful and getting blown out by A&M and Clemson struggling with Louisville and losing to NC State, losing at Pitt. I think at one point in this game, I thought that this was going to at one point in this season, I thought it was going to maybe be like a 6-5 Clemson team and a 3-8 South Carolina team at this point. Yeah. But instead, it's 6-5 South Carolina and a 8-3 Clemson team. Clemson still has a chance to get to 10 wins. Still very real possibility. South Carolina's made a bowl game, so they'll be bowling either way, depending on no matter what happens this game. So I think it could be interesting. Just what are some early thoughts on this game? And I'm excited for you to get to experience your first Clemson South Carolina rivalry game, man. It's a fun rivalry. It doesn't get the attention I think it deserves.
I was given a couple of fair warnings actually after the Clemson Wake Forest game by, a couple of people who've been there to Columbia, telling me to kind of keep my head on the swivel a little bit. It can get a little bit raucous there. So I'm looking forward to that environment, looking forward to being there in Columbia for that game. So let's take a look at it. It's Clemson against South Carolina. South Carolina obviously isn't in the position that Clemson's in, which, is a position to make it to their conference title game next month. But, Shane Beamer, for some reason or another, his team continues to come prepared for these big time games. You mentioned the blowout loss to Texas A&M, but they did blow out a Florida Gators team that still at that time, kind of the wheels were falling off the wagon a little bit. But, South Carolina kind of put the nail in the coffin for their season. And then they got a big win over Auburn. They played Missouri pretty tight too. So I think they're going to be coming in with a lot of momentum into this game. But Clemson, on the flip side of the coin, they're going to be coming in with a lot of momentum as well, having won, 4 straight games, feeling really confident about how the offense is playing. I definitely, we're not going to do our official predictions until Friday, but I would definitely take Clemson in this game as of right now, unless, and we keep on mentioning this is the thing that pops up every single game of the season, the injuries, who's going to come out injured, who's going to be available for Clemson. But yeah, I would take the Tigers, and I think it should be a pretty comfortable win. I would take them by double digits right now.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think Clemson will be favored. I think they should win the game, but I do think, Clemson's been a different team away from home this year, and South Carolina's got a good environment. It's a tough place to play. DJ making his first playing this first game against South Carolina, playing at Williams-Brice. So I think it's a game where both offenses are honestly going to have trouble moving the ball. I haven't watched a ton of South Carolina this year. I did watch last night. I thought their defense did a pretty good job. They've got a pretty good front seven over there, or at least good group of defensive linemen that can get some pressure. So I think it'll be fun. Shane Beamer's done a nice job with that team. I think they've exceeded pretty much everyone's expectations. I don't think anyone really thought they'd be at a bowl in his first year. So yeah, I'm interested to see just how these young players on that offense handle the environment, handle the emotions and everything that comes with it. DJ, I'm sure, doesn't know a whole lot about the South Carolina Clemson rivalry coming from California. Obviously the two teams didn't play last year, which was weird. So man, it should be an awesome game. I'm really looking forward to it. And it's the best week of the year for me, man. I love this rivalry. I think, I think it's underrated in college football. I don't think it gets nearly the attention it deserves. And the last few years, it's just been a complete one-sided, just beat down. Wouldn't be totally surprised if it's that way again, but I also think that it has a chance to be a pretty good and entertaining, fun game.
I don't know if I'm going to go that far with you, Matt. I'm going to have to push back on that just a little bit. I think it's for people like myself who value offense. I want to see kind of both. I want to see good offense and good defense. We're not going to see any good offense next Saturday. I can promise you that. This is not going to be fun to watch at all when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. These two offenses have just, I don't want to say South Carolina's underperformed. I think they're probably, at expectations given, that Shane Beamer's first year. But with Clemson, the expectations they had going into the season and how the offenses looked, yeah, they've been below expectations. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to be a fun game offensively. I think the score that I would lean toward right now is probably, I don't know, 23-14, 23-13, somewhere along those lines. I think Clemson could get about a double-digit win, but it's going to all come down to the defense. I don't think South Carolina's offense, even with the crowd supporting them in that electric environment that I'm expecting on Saturday, based on what I've heard from you and others, I just don't think it's going to be enough. I think Clemson's defense, and we saw it against Wake Forest, is one of the best in the country, and it's going to shock. They're going to shock South Carolina once again. I know South Carolina went up against Georgia, and they weren't really able to put up much points against them. I think they put up about 13. So I'm expecting about the same between this game between Clemson and South Carolina.
Yeah, I'll push back. I mean, I think there's some talent on this team on both offenses, or in this game with both offenses. I mean, Will Shipley, Bo Collins, Kobe Pace, I think are very good offensive players. Davis Allen obviously is having a great year. So I think Clemson has some guys on offense. And then South Carolina, I mean, they had the SEC's leading rusher last year. Kevin Harris is back. Zaquandre White, I believe is how you say his first name, has had a really good year. He really stood out last night watching them play Auburn. Josh Vann at receiver has done a nice job for South Carolina. So not a ton of talent, but there is some talent, offensive talent in this game. And I think it'll be a fun one, man. I think it should be good. I obviously think the defenses are better than the offenses, but there are some guys who I think can make some big plays. So we'll get into more of that game later this week and break it down a lot more. But just wanted to go ahead and get it on everyone's radar and talk about it a little bit. Just rivalry week, always fun. Should be fun. So yeah, Joseph, what you want to add before we finish up?
Well, I think that the one thing that we should add here is that this would be Clemson's 7th straight win against South Carolina if they are able to pull out this victory, which, it's an in-state rivalry. They go after some of the same recruits. That does mean something. And also, I'd like to take some time to kind of reflect on what we've seen from Clemson this season now that they've played their final home game. Matt, just what are your overall thoughts? Another season in the books at Death Valley, everything you've seen, what was the highlight? Give me all of it, man.
Yeah, I just think that it was, and someone asked Dabo if this has been his best coaching job of his career this year. And I wouldn't go that far necessarily, but I do think it's been a really good coaching job to keep this team together, to keep everyone fighting, to keep everyone believing. I know I was certainly wondering after they went 2-2 to start the year, and you got some of these seniors and super seniors who came back really just wanting to win a national title, how this would go. But I think that the coaching staff has done a great job of keeping the team together. I think leaders, particularly defensively, guys like James Skowski and Nolan Turner, we've been playing through pain this year and just keep battling every week. We've done a great job. So yeah, it's not the year we thought we'd see before the year, but still for Clemson to go 8-3, 6-2, send these seniors out with another undefeated season at home, I think is just huge for this program as it continues to build. I think the future's bright, and just overall really impressed with the way Clemson rebounded after a rough start. What are your thoughts? Your first season at Clemson?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. The people there were fantastic. Everyone treated me with a lot of respect, from the personnel there, the staff members, everyone in between, the event staff members, everybody there, the fans, they really, they treated us reporters with a lot of respect, kind of interacting with us. So, yeah, I just found it to be a really fun season. I thought, some of the early games were pretty interesting. The Georgia Tech, Clemson, the one where Clemson was able to stop Georgia Tech at the 1 yard line on 4th down. I thought that was easily the one that's like etched inside my memory and probably will be for the rest of my life. The way the crowd reacted to that was awesome. It's kind of seeing the "We Want Arch" sign at the Florida State game. I thought that was pretty cool, and how everyone surrounded Arch and all the fans looking down. That was definitely a highlight for me. Man, I'm getting a tear in my eye, it's, just kind of reminiscing on everything. It was just a really good season. It was my first time being able to go to games since 2019. So, it has been a couple of years, and, being on the new beat as well. I just thought it's funny. I was talking with Dan Orlovsky. I want to say it was the Georgia Tech game. And he's telling me, he's like, Clemson has one of the best environments in the country, one of the best college fan environments in the country. And I didn't really get to see that against SC State, but, they really showed up throughout the whole year, minus the Florida State game toward the end there. But it was just continuous electric crowds, rocking crowds. When they did the jump, everyone was jumping, and all the failed wave attempts too. I just everything in between. I found it to be a really memorable experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm glad to have you. It's not over yet. We still got the South Carolina game and the bowl game as well. So we'll finish it out strong. And just thank y'all for joining us for another episode. Lots to break down. We'll have a lot more to break down throughout this week, and a lot going on over at ClemsonSports.com. I'm all over it with team coverage. Joseph is crushing it with recruiting coverage. So I encourage y'all to come check it out. Come hang out on the Tigers Den. You can get a 7-day free trial and see what we're all about. And we feel like you'll love what you see and come stay and sign up. So thank y'all once again for joining us, and we'll talk with you soon.
Yeah, we'll talk with you all soon. And I just want to note, I'm going to be heading down to Florida this upcoming week and to try and talk to some prospects there. I recently wrapped up a trip to California and Virginia, so be on the lookout for that. Matt, as always, is providing excellent team coverage. Expect a film review out later this week on what he saw between Clemson and Wake Forest, why the Tigers were able to excel. And then also basketball side of things too. I know they had a tough loss this week against St. Bonaventure, but the basketball team is looking pretty good for the most part. So yeah, even though the football team isn't going to be in the playoffs, there's a lot to look forward to in the coming months, and we can't wait to be along with you on this journey here. So for Matt Connolly, I'm Joseph Hastings. We're signing out. Take care, everyone.